Hey, everybody, welcome to another Practical Pet Chat with Lorin and Rob. Lorin, it's good to see you.
Same here.
It's good to be seen, right? Um, so I thought we'd kick off today with something interesting that happened to me. I know it happens to you. We often uh, joke around with each other about it, and really, I think the gist of it is what makes you qualified, or who do you trust, and how do you know how to trust, and this and that. I had someone recently, um, I'll say, inquire as to what made me qualified for any of the things that I've done in the pet world. And I kind of chuckled and I said, well, I've done a few things.
One or two.
Yeah, but the reality is we all start at a baseline of we have a
Oh,
passion for a pet. And you and I have talked about, what's brought us in, gotten us deeper, and continues for us these days. But I thought it was just a great line. And it was funny because I started and then there was so much to share with this person that they're like, okay, I get it. You're really qualified. And I was like, maybe, because here's the thing. There are a lot of people doing so many different things. And I ended that discussion with this person by saying, what really makes me qualified or anybody else is if it works for you, and more
right.
importantly, your pet. Because there are a lot of great, knowledgeable people that I know who have given me tremendous advice that have worked for many pets that didn't work for my pets.
Right.
Didn't
I
mean
was
they
one of
weren't.
them.
You were one of them. And I've been the same. We returned that favor, right? But from the standpoint, though, of it really is something that, and you and I, again, we've hit on this where we almost give so much credence to, well, this person's an expert, so this must be that pathway. And I know you and I both have talked about there are many pathways to a final destination, and it is the practice of medicine. It is the practice of so many things. And nobody knows your pet or yourself like you do. And I think that's the other part of it that I, shared with this person is what works for you? What's practical? I mean, the reality is, well, yeah, if I could home make everything and I could this and I could that and just have the finest ingredients and, well, is that practical for everybody? It may or may not be. So that doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's wrong. I've got to take what they give me and see what works and then what applies to my pet to get to that place and standing where I want. And by the way, that's just that snapshot in time, right? Because things change over time.
Right.
So,
I think for a lot of people, it's sad. They don't, when you're immersed in this, the way we have been immersed in this, we look at everything differently. People know their animals and they love them, but what they know about them, and I'll try to get people to tell me things about them. And I hear things that they don't even know they're telling me that are useful. So a lot of times when somebody's walking me through an issue and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, let's go back to that. What happened with this? And they're, oh, that had nothing to do with it. Okay, well, hang on a minute. Let's discuss it anyway, because so many times it does have something to do with it. And they're not connecting the dots. And there's knowing, and then there's knowing your pet, and then there's knowing dogs in general or cats in general, and understanding the bigger picture of it. And you know how I feel about the word expert. So
yes.
we'll leave that alone. But what really makes a difference is how well do you trust the person? How do you build trust? What do they do to build trust for you? Are they just a talking head and they're just telling you things and not asking you anything? It makes me crazy, because I see that in a lot of instances, whether it's a store or a vet's office or online or a group or whatever. And Nobody's asking any questions. They're just spouting information. It's like, how do you know that information applies? You haven't asked anything.
Right.
I've seen in pet stores when somebody comes in and they don't even get asked a question, they just get told what pet food they need. It's like, well, you didn't ask me what I have. You didn't ask me how old, if there were any issues, anything going on. The dog overweight, underweight? You don't even know what breed it is. A working dog needs a different food than, a couch potato dog. And it just, there's so much missing information. So you really have to look at how a person approaches the information that they're going to provide you. Is it dialed into you, or is it just spouted information? I mean, you don't need a talking Wikipedia person, and
Right.
I use Wikipedia because anybody can put anything on Wikipedia, right?
Right.
Anybody can. So do you really know that it's factual? So I've been in circumstances with clients where I know we've talked about this before. They come to me. I go through all the process, free consultation and everything, spend 2 hours and tell them what they need and, to get some ideas to try and that kind of thing. And then they come back a month later and they want to tell me what the other three people they've spoken to subsequently have told them.
Right.
And I finally get to the point of, okay, stop. Pick someone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be me. Pick someone that you feel like you have a modicum of faith in and start there. And if it works, great. Keep going with that person. Keep going with that person till it doesn't, and then try someone else. And if that doesn't work, but you have to give it time. You can't bounce from person to person. The most classic example of that is pet food.
Yeah.
There is no agreed upon way to feed a dog. I mean, zero agreed upon. There are some people who are in this camp and some people who are in that camp, and then there's the vets who are in their, what they were taught in vet school camp, and then it just, everybody has their own little, area. That doesn't mean they're right or wrong. It really depends on the animal. I mean, I'm not a fan of grain, and you know that.
Yeah.
I don't like feeding animals. Dog. Let me take that back. I don't like feeding dogs and cats grain. I have reasons why I don't. However, I would be lying if I didn't admit to the fact that I've told clients on occasion, let's try this, for a short
Right.
time. This may get this right, and we may be able to move on from there. The one of the biggest myths out there that you know shows you how powerful that one of the those encampments are. A dog has diarrhea or is vomiting, and what do people do? They feed chicken rice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, is your dog okay with chicken? Yeah, I feed it all the time. Great, let's feed something else like turkey, and let's not feed rice. And they're like, well, rice is what you're supposed to do. That's what the vet tells me. I understand. It can also cause inflammation. Okay, it also can give a false sense of it's an issue being fixed, when it's not really. Can we just do maybe canned pumpkin and some turkey? Change up the protein, do a little bit of this. And when people come, the interesting part is how many times in 20 years people have come back, even people I've had for a long time as clients, they come back in and they go, that worked. Like, I can't believe it worked.
Perfect expression, by the way. That is it worked.
It
As if,
worked.
yeah,
Like,
by
I
magic.
threw the dice and, it came
Yeah.
up sevens and gosh, it worked. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm not surprised that worked.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting that until you and I were talking before this recording, and we were talking about how people get stuck, just because somebody has been doing something for 20 years or 30 years or whatever, and it doesn't matter what it is in life. They get stuck oftentimes. This is the way they've always said it, the way they've always done it. This is
Right.
how it's always been. I know my husband, the thing that he fought the most in the company that he worked for was well, we've always done it this way. And he's like, but it's not the right way, or we don't have to continue to do it that way. Why don't we do it this way? Try something different because this isn't working, you know?
Right.
And he got fought at every turn. And he'd come home super frustrated. And I'd be like, oh, honey, I hear that every day. You know, that goes on with what I do every day. But it's very true that people have to that's why it's so important to dial it into the animal. If you're not focused on the fix, but are focused on the animal, the fix will present,
Right. Right.
you
Well,
know?
the other thing too, it's interesting. Worst response you've heard to that, I'll share mine while you gather yours,
Okay.
but it's our bestseller. Everybody I know
Uh,
buys this. It's worked for everybody. Okay. And my wife's big on me, always, never, etc. The words that right away, you're probably getting bad advice or clinging to a
yes.
bad argument. But from the standpoint of great, and I'm happy for them, but I'm here for my pets. And that's that secondary as you're talking about building up the trust. If that's what the person giving you their feedback has as their justification for something, you
Run,
need to move to somebody else.
run.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's just not going to be. And I think that's probably something that also concerns me the most because, after the pandemic, we lost such a tremendous knowledge base
Yeah.
at the stores with the different manufacturers, etc. The years of experience, the years of trying different ways, different things, seeing that, oh, this seems to work more often for these type of situations or these types of breeds, etc. I just find today is really missing, and it's sad. But I get it. We all had to move on to other areas and things, but that's a tough one. So when you
Well,
walk in, yeah,
marketing works because it's clever. You know,
right,
it works because it's designed to, I mean, there's a whole reason why they use focus groups and those kinds of things is because they're designed to figure out, where the button is.
right,
What's the trigger, And I'll give an example. Breed specific food makes me insane. And I bought into it originally. Back in the day, many, many years ago, I was like, well, that makes sense. They
right.
formulated
It,
this
it does.
food
Yeah,
specifically for this breed. So this is what I'm going to feed because I got that breed. Until you get into nutrition and you start looking at ingredient panels going, how come these have the same thing in them?
right, right.
And these dogs are complete opposites. So I would have clients come in and they go, what do you feed a lab?
Yeah,
Uh, oh, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I have questions. How old is your lab?
right.
And what have you been feeding? And do you have any issues going on? And on and on. What's the weight of your
Yeah,
lab?
exactly. A whole list of
Yeah,
are
it's an
they
individual
active?
thing.
Are they a couch potato? Do they have any allergies? What's the family history if you know it? If you don't, okay, what have you observed?
What
Um,
age were they neutered at?
oh yeah, that's a good one too. So I mean, and I think that's the thing is, and wow, we are really moving around to different topics here, but just going back again
We
to
are.
that, what makes you a expert, and I know you don't like that word, is not anything that most people would associate with that word. It's having the curiosity to dive deeper and to really research and find an answer that
Learn.
fits your
Mhm,
situation,
mhm.
that is practical. I slipped that one in there, folks, because practical pet chats and people asking why we called it that. But what is practical and what fits? Because at the end of the day, if you got to climb a mountain to get to the advice to try it out, most folks aren't going to do that. So there's just that whole spectrum of how do we find solutions? Where do we find those solutions? And how do we bring it all together where we can do it not just practically, but efficiently and fit
Yeah.
it into our lives, our pets' lives, and then be able to gauge those outcomes and say, yeah, this is working. Or
What
not quite
what
there yet, but we're on the right path.
what makes that potential hopeful is that both sides during the conversation should be learning. So if you're talking to me about your animal, I should be learning about your animal. And you should be learning from the things that I'm then able to put together from what I've learned about your animal, which then point me in the direction of ways to help you. And,
Right.
so many times it isn't financially based. So many times it's an easy correction. So many times it's a change. It's something you didn't think of. Someone that we both know that we're both close to, uh, and she's buried. It's Christmas time. She's got a lot on her plate. She's got family going on. She runs two businesses, and she was having issues with her cat. And she called me and she goes, "Okay, I just need to run this by you because I'm missing something." And as she goes through it, and I keep interrupting her and asking her a question here and a question there, because no matter who you're talking to, they want to tell you what they think they see is going on and what's happening. Um, and finally, I came down to whose person is this cat? And she said, "Me." I said, "You. You're running two businesses. You've got a child. You've been out of town. Your husband's out of town, who is normally the other person the cat trusts. And the cat hasn't been getting nearly the attention that it needs. It's needy, right?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "The number one worst time of the year for animals is the holidays, because from October on, it's chaos. And so everything that is normal for them is no longer normal. It's just there's things in the house that aren't normally there. People are gone, strangers are in the house, too much going on, too much excitement, too much energy, too much too much stress, too much, too much, too much, too much, too much." And, we just figure the dog and the cat are rolling with it,
Right.
because we're rolling with it. We don't have any choice. They're not necessarily rolling with it. And sure enough, she goes, "Oh my God, I see it. It's completely it." Nothing to do except, I told her, I said, "Take an extra 15 minutes, at night when it's just you and the cat, cuddle with the cat, curl up with the cat, just make it you and the cat." And she started to bring the cat to work with her because she can, it's her business. And the cat was like, "All right, I'm with mom. This is cool." And everything's changing. So oftentimes it doesn't require a trip to a vet. It doesn't require medication. It doesn't require, anything other than somebody looking at it who isn't standing in the middle of the forest, that can see it clearly and go from there. So I recently was out of town as well, and I don't take an Uber, but I have a car service that I take to and from the airport. Same driver, it's the owner of the company, same driver every time, and he knows what I do. So we've gradually started conversation. He has a lab puppy. I think it's a little over a year. It's not very old, and so still a puppy. And I get all situated in the car, and we're on our way to the Houston airport. And he goes, "So I got a question. This was the best trip to the airport ever because it flew by. It was talking nothing but dog stuff the whole time. And it was great because he took the information really well because it was a learning process for him. And he's knowledgeable. But he believes in handling the dog one way, and the wife believes in babying the dog.
Sure.
So he doesn't want to hand feed the dog from the table. He doesn't want to leave food down all the time. Those sorts of things he believes in. And I went through the whole thing with him and told him, "You're right. There's nowhere that a dog would get food all the time or any animal would get food all the time. There's no buffet waiting for them anywhere, except in a human's house. And we talked about the reasons why you don't want to do that. We went into this whole thing. And he said, would you come tell my wife? And I had to laugh because it reminded me of so many times in the store when people would go, can I bring my husband in or can I bring my wife in? And you explain to her, she won't believe me. And hearing it from you, she will. I'm like, well, sure, you can bring them. I'll give it a shot. But, if somebody doesn't want to or doesn't choose to see that, then, what are we going to do? 90% of the time it went well, but there
Sure.
was 10% of the time that it was, people were mad that they felt dragged there, and didn't
Right.
really want to hear what I had to say. But so we finished that conversation. Gets quiet. About a minute later, he goes, so are you one of those people who thinks that nothing is ever a dog's fault? I said, 100%. And he said, see, how can that be? And I said, well, is the dog in charge in your house?
Right.
And he said, no. I said, who's in charge of the dog? He goes, well, technically, I guess me, because my wife's a pushover. And I said, okay. So if the dog does something wrong, it's because you dropped the ball somewhere. Your dog did get taught something it needed to be taught. It didn't understand. It doesn't come into your house speaking our language, knowing what we mean and our inflections and our intents and things. It has to learn it, and
Right.
they do a splendid job. They do such a better job of learning us than we do of them. No matter how focused you are, you're never going to learn your dog or your cat the way they learn you because you're all they have. You have your friends
Yeah.
and TV and family and, a job and social life and all these other things. You're on your phone or whatever. They're looking at you constantly. They're with you. They're reading
Yeah.
you. They're listening to you. They're looking at you. They're reading all your hand gestures and, every single thing. So the example he gave, he said, well, he said, there's a lady that walks around my street. And when she does, she doesn't put her dog on the leash. How do you feel about that? And I said, I don't agree with it. And he said, why? And I said, because you're assuming that there won't be something that triggers the dog.
Right.
And I said, so this isn't about how you see it or the human sees it. This is about how the dog sees it. And why set your dog up for any type of potential failure? Anything could go wrong. So he gave me an example. He goes, you're right about that. He said, so this lady never walks the dog on the leash. The dog runs around. I said, I have one of those ladies, not the same lady, but I have one. And the dog pees and poops on everybody's lawn, and has terrible recall and doesn't respond. And, that's her baby. And I stand there going, all I can think about is something's going to happen. This dog's going to pay the price, whether the
Right.
dog gets hit, bites somebody, whatever's going to happen, the dog's going to end up to be the one to pay the price. And so he tells me that, it's kind of dark and he was putting the trash cans out at the curb for pickup the next day. And he has his dog wait back by the gate and he takes the trash cans out to the curb and then he'll call his dog to come to the end of the driveway to meet him there. In the meantime, he makes the dog sit and stay. And the dog's not on a leash. And this lady's dog's not on a leash. And so his dog comes, he calls his dog comes to the end of the driveway, but on the way sees the interloper on his street
Mm.
circling around and immediately takes off to bark and chase that dog away. That dog gets all chesty, and isn't going to be chased away because he's with his owner, right?
Right.
And he's like, I got really mad at her and, told her she needed to keep that dog on a leash and everything. I went, huh? You're right. She does. Why wasn't your dog on a leash?
Right.
And he said, well, because it was my yard. Well, all of our front yards, none of them are fenced, right?
Right.
And I said, mm-hmm. Do you think that your dog knows where the driveway ends? And he just, he kind of looks at me in the rearview mirror. And I said, this isn't about how you see it. This is about how your dog sees it. And what your dog sees is another dog coming along, and he wants to be sure that that dog doesn't come for you, his house, his turf, him, any of that. I said, now you have a problem. I said, so if you're going to do something like that, you need to be sure that there's no one on your street, and frankly, I still wouldn't recommend it. In my store, we used to, with the police officers, would oftentimes use to train, would be these 30-foot cotton training leads that are really thin, so that they always had control of the dog, because that's the key, to have control of the dog when you're training and going through those kinds of things. But even in situations, I mean, with all the police dogs that we backed and supported for my store, and you talk to the cops, they're always careful. As
Right.
highly trained as those dogs are, they're careful to be sure that nothing goes wrong. So he, still in the vehicle, almost to the airport, he tells me the story about this impressive guy who comes into Home Depot all the time, and or Lowe's or something like that, one of the hardware stores, and the dog's never on a leash. And it's, one of those, police kind of dogs. I said, "Is this a Belgian Malinois?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's it." I said, "Okay." And he said he does these things where, and I've seen these things on Instagram where guys will do these, usually military guys or police officers will do these things where the dog stays between their legs, or interweaves around them, and
Sure.
it's impressive as hell. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to see when there's no one else around, and it's him and the dog,
Right.
because this always comes down to, the dog is not in his territory. He's in a public place where anything can go wrong. Somebody could run at him thinking, puppy, puppy, puppy,
Right.
something, and any number of things. And this guy has nothing to count on but recall. And while his recall may be excellent, there is that slim chance that something goes wrong and the dog pays.
Right. Right. Well, and ironically, my neighbor has a Belgian Malinois who terrifies on occasion the neighbors, my daughters, and when Max gets out, the neighbors will call me, and I step outside, and you see this magnificent dog.
Oh, they're
Now,
beautiful
yeah,
dogs.
I've grown up around German Shepherds all my life, but
Mhm.
this is next level. Okay,
Yes,
so folks, if you've never seen this, go see. And to your point, I know what the dog is capable of, not just in anger, but in training and all the rest, and it's magnificent. I also don't have that same fear level, but I do have fear and respect. And I tell,
respect. That's
yeah,
it.
and
Yeah,
I tell my kids, hey, if they're out there, because they also have a much smaller dog, Champ, love you, Champ. But Champ's the instigator, by the way. Like
right.
if Champ goes nuts, Max is going crazy, right?
Sure.
Um, and but what's fun, I've never had an issue with either one of them, while others maybe feel uncomfortable. And that's the other point of this, is that, and that's what I wanted to make on this was, just because you're confident and
Hmm.
you've never seen anything other than perfection does not mean in one bad second it all changes. And to your
Yep.
point, the animal pays and others may pay. And it was so avoidable. And it's really a sad thing, because these are amazing. Uh, and it's not just this breed. I see that with all different breeds, where they'll be like, oh, that's the
Oh my
dangerous
gosh,
breed.
I'm not bashing the breed. The breed is a
No,
phenomenal
no,
breed.
but for those
Yeah,
out
no,
there,
they're
I'm sure
right.
there's probably more folks who are thinking of a certain breed that has bans in many
Yeah,
cities throughout the country, et cetera.
yeah.
And I've worked with a couple of those big organizations, and I'll be like, those are the sweetest little love bugs and hippos that you've ever been around, and all the rest of that. But I still know any animal is capable of that.
Right.
Little tiny ones to big gigantic ones.
Well, and
Okay.
that's just it. I mean, people will go, well, that breed is safe. And I'm like, what breed is that? A golden. I'm like, really? Because I've seen a golden go after a dog. I've seen a lab go out. I've seen a chihuahua. I've seen you name the breed. This isn't about how you see it. It's about how whatever is happening in the moment, this is about how they see it. If they feel threatened, if they feel challenged, if they feel, if anything,
Healthy.
yeah,
If they're safe. I'm a scuba diver, and I will tell you, I've had more incidents of dolphin aggression than I have of shark aggression. But dolphins are so cute, Rob,
yeah,
until they're not. And that's the
right.
reality of it. Same thing with humans. I mean, at the end of the day,
I was just going to say that. Look at
it's
humans.
it's all of us, right? I mean, and trust me, folks, Lorin seems like a great person, but there are
No,
times my fingers have been slapped many times. Takes
you've
me back
been
to my
bitten.
that and the ruler. I'm just not sure. My Catholic school days.
Yeah,
But no, it is really it's such a great point too, because that's the sad part is the consequences can't be undone either.
no,
And
they're fatal.
unlike unlike where if a human does something wrong, there is a process that you may get a fair shot at. I'm not going to say you always get a fair shot. Lord knows. But that being said, in the animal world, especially,
Mhm.
we have just not done a good job of giving any kind of proper recourse, discussion, reviews. It is a very, check this box, answer that. Sorry, here's the result. And that's just avoid that, folks. Avoid that.
Well,
It
the
is a
worst part in the public place scenario, this was
yeah,
about ego. This was about ego on behalf of the human. This had nothing to do
yeah.
whatsoever with the dog. This is the guy showing off, and all about his ego. And the driver looked at me and he goes, "Oh my God, I see that now." And I said, "Yeah, this has nothing to do with dog because if he loved that dog, he wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have put that dog in that position to do that. I mean, he doesn't need to go to a Home Depot or a Lowe's and show off, what
Right.
his dog can do. And there's enough places and venues for that type of a scenario. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Where you sign up
Yeah.
for that and it's, expected and there's safety margins in place and all this. Because again, it comes down to the animal and how the animal views
And
it.
and there are plenty of I think reasons I can give too. When I take Bella, we have to walk up a hill where we live to just get to where the trash cans go and all that. And I take Bella with me. We walk past Max and Champ. We walk past Stella. We walk past whatever else is out there. We've got the squirrel circus in the trees. We've got eagles. We've got, you name it, right? But one of the things that I will do is if nobody's out, I will, work with Bella. I'll take her off the leash and I'll say, go home. Now, at first, I would take her and she would carry the leash behind her. It would drag behind her. And she'd go, because I want to see if she gets out, if something happens and I don't know, what's her reaction going to be, you know? And I want my kids, I want myself, I want my wife. And so we worked with all that. But there's four of us there to corral, and there's only it's a one lane, walkway up to the hill. And I'm still paranoid to do that. I don't do that every time just for the sake of, well, let's do it just to do it. I do it when I know it's safe. I do it when I know, or as safe as it can be, right? Because let's be honest, it only takes a second. It only takes one squirrel, one whatever to grab their attention. We've got owls in our trees, one little hooty hoo, and Belle's going, "What's that?" And they live off our energy as well, too, right? So if I'm
Yes.
stressed, she's stressed. Not a good time to do any kind of training.
Right.
No matter how confident, how many times she's done it right, back it up. And that's that part, because in the store, I see that and my feeling is always it's not, the pet parent energy that I'm worried about.
Right.
It's everybody else's energy now. coming in, and you got that Venn diagram of, whoops, we've got the overlap here. Now, what does that do to the energy of that particular animal? It's
Right.
not fair.
Well, I've had incidents in the store where I'm reading what's going on from behind the counter, and I trained my staff to this too. Is we had to create diversions. We had to go in and interrupt because we could see that it was heightening, and go
Yeah,
in and interrupt so that it didn't turn into something that was avoidable, and divert one dog from another, divert pet parent over here because then they come with the dog, those sorts of things. So it's really paying attention to, people take their animals with them because they love them. They want to be with them, but they need to be paying attention to how everything is affecting them.
right.
They're out of their normal environment. And my favorite thing is when I'm reading an animal that comes into my store and I'm watching. Anytime anybody would come to my store, I'd say hi to the human. The whole time I'm watching the animal. And I will come up to someone's dog and I'll come up sideways,
Mm, okay.
and just stand there. And that way I'm not, confronting the dog who's
Yeah,
like, if they don't know me.
yeah.
And
Right.
my favorite thing, circling back to your original question, my favorite thing is the pet parent who says, "Oh, she won't bite." And I'm looking at this dog going, "The hell she won't,"
Yeah,
because she's looking at me like, "Don't even think about it. Don't talk to me. Don't touch me. Don't reach out."
right.
And it's like, "You're good. I'm going to give you all the space you need because you're in an environment you've not been in before. You're wary. You can tell that other dogs have been here. You need to get the lay of the land. You're, a very highly anxious, easily intimidated dog. So I'm going to give you space and see how that goes."
You just said something there too that I want to call out because I think that's another part of this. You can walk into one place and it have no impact. You walk into another place and you may go, oh, there's not a lot of difference. There's store shelves, there's this, whatever it is. It's the
Yeah.
same environment. Sometimes it's the lighting, sometimes it's the smell. As a human, I have that. I was out shopping with one of my daughters. We went to three different stores, and I don't know why, but we walked into one of them, and I had to stop her and say, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I have vertigo. And at first, I thought maybe it's because I'm getting older. And she says, wow, I thought it was me, Dad. And I'm like,
Wow.
no, let's skip it. And, we went to a different store. By the way, same chain, no issue. And I was
Hmm.
like, so bizarre, except there was just something in the environment that we couldn't necessarily quickly identify, but our energy, our senses perceived it, and our body
Yeah.
reacted. And so it's the same thing. When I'm very much in tune, I love how you said you're observing the reaction of the pets because they're so much more aware. Because to your point, they are hyper focused. They are not distracted unless there's a squirrel running, but they're not distracted as much as I am. Um, so it's just one of those where, with all that in mind, I hope that Lauren and I have convinced all of you. Well, extra thoughts into that before the next time just let's just go for it.
My favorite, real quickly, client, couple girls come in the store, um, probably in their 20s, and they're in the food aisle, and one of my staff is helping them. And so I get done with whatever I'm doing, and I'm going to go wander into the aisle because there's a dog, right? And anytime there's a dog, I need to be there. Just check out the dog.
Yeah.
Um, and I walk in the aisle, and I'm like, and I got super quiet and just stood there and listened and watched. And finally, I looked at both the girls after about 10 minutes. My employee is telling them about food and all this other stuff. And I said, "So, what kind of breed is your dog?" What I wanted to say is, "What kind of breed do you think you have?" And I don't even remember what they said, but I'm telling you, stone cold coyote.
Oh, okay. So,
Everything, I mean, not only did it look like coyote, its behavior was coyote. I
wow.
mean, it was very wary. It was just its build and its height and its weight and its face, and just it didn't want to be there. And they were evasive about where they got it. And it's been interesting. It's been interesting to, to pay attention to some of the animals that people acquire, and
Oh,
then go shopping
100%.
with. And I'm like, I'm
That
thinking we
added,
should take,
and that they go shopping with
yeah, that
just
they
makes
go
me
shopping
laugh
with. Yeah.
because in certain states, and I don't want to say maybe where you live, I'm not even sure you couldn't take your pet tiger shopping with you. Um, yeah, it's fine. I've seen some things and where 100% you go, oh, either you don't know or you hope the rest of us don't know.
That
Uh,
right there. Yeah.
yeah, and and I will say, I've had some unique breeds, and yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, that's funny.
We
That is
were we were near a sanctuary too, and that was always interesting because sometimes they would stop in, and they'd have wolves, and at the time, and I love all of them. I think they're
yeah,
beautiful, but at the time, I'm thinking shouldn't be shopping with them,
yeah, yeah, exactly,
you
exactly.
know?
Well, and in particular too, so one of my family members, we have Great Pyrenees in our family, um, and so I borrow the Great Pyrenees when I go to Colorado, and it's the size of a polar bear, and that's not exaggeration. Can stand up, put
No,
its
they're
head.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, just this, and the sweetest, most loving, most amazing dog, which is what every pet parent says about their dog, right? And their pet uncle says
They
that.
are pretty sweet
Oh my gosh, they're
as
amazing.
a breed. Yeah.
But my point on it is more so if I take her anywhere, everybody wants to meet her. Everybody wants to see her. I took her to the garden each time I've gone to the Gardens of the Gods with her. He's the star. Nature is beautiful, but oh my gosh, what is that? What breed is that? Can I take a
Yeah.
picture with her? Can I pet her? All those wonderful, and for those of you who may have met me on the trail and went, hey, I love that. I love to see because you see the energy and the lift that
Hmm.
she gets. But if it was the opposite, I'd also need to respect that as well, right?
That, yes.
And that's where I was going with it is that when you do that, you're also putting up that flag of look at something you haven't seen, and we're all curious, and it's the same thing. The little tiny dogs, the super huge dogs. If you don't have one of those or you have the opposite, you're super intrigued. Oh my gosh, how cute. Oh, I
Right.
love that. And I want to experience it even for a few seconds, few moments. And that may not be what that particular animal wants.
Well,
And
and you have to
this
do
is
it
a
the
tough
right way
spot.
though,
Yeah.
because you do want exposure. If you don't expose an animal to,
Yes.
things, then they don't get secure because it's always something weird to them. But after so often, if you know that this kid just, I'm a homebody mom.
Right.
I don't enjoy it. I don't want people around me. I don't, when they turn away and they won't look at anybody, and they're just very withdrawn and you tried it several times, then you have to respect that animal's wishes,
Right.
and that's not the kid you take shopping.
Right. No, let the kids take shopping.
Like
Yeah.
like the coyote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clearly didn't want to be there.
Probably, probably not at that time, at least. Let's put it like
No, he
that.
didn't want to be
Because
there. Mm-mm.
everybody has a bad day. Well, so we have covered a lot. I want to also make sure, though, that we cover how if any of our folks out there have any questions for you or I, because there are a lot of people who do send us great questions. But I want anybody who watches this. You and I have been doing this a long time, and I want to let those know who are watching this who have seen other things that we've done. one of the things that still brings me joy is things that I helped with or filmed 10, 15 years ago that I still get that daily, if not, multi times daily email of, hey, thanks for that video. I really needed it at that time at this. So if there's a way that you all have any questions, you want to just share something with Lauren or I, you can do that. Practicalpetchat@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, send us your questions. We're just getting going here. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If you're not, I get it. Lauren is awesome and should do 99% of the talking. Rob should do about 1%. But we'd still love to hear from you. So send us an email, drop us a like, do all the different things that we do in this social media world these days. But know that we're doing this because so many of you have said over times, gosh, I'd just love to be that fly on the wall when you're having a conversation. This is that opportunity. So, but we want you to be a part of it. So reach out
Except
to
there's
us.
more swear words when you're a fly on the wall. We try to clean it up for this. So, but if you have any topics that you'd like us to discuss too, then you can certainly bring that up as well.
I love it. I love it. Lauren, thank you so much. It's great to be
Thanks,
with you.
Rob. Always.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as, nor should it be construed as, professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for your pets. Always seek the advice of a qualified veterinarian with any questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical condition. Never disregard professional veterinary advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts and the guests of this podcast are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared during these episodes. Any reliance on the information provided is solely at your own risk. Copyright 2025 Practical Pet Chat, all rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or reproduction of any content from this podcast, including but not limited to audio, scripts, and show notes, is prohibited without prior written consent. The opinions and views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Practical Pet Chat.